Good evening. You're listening to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you, as always, from the Extreme Studios in the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have with me, also from Central Florida, the young 20-something Professor Pixel. Tonight's episode, our continuing season 1 of the original TV show, Mission Impossible, episodes 23 and 24. Pixel, we'll have a couple more weeks of doing these double episode drops on our review of this great classic TV show. And I think we've distilled it down pretty quickly where we've said there's a commie episode because it has something to do with communism and dictators. There's the rogue third world dictator. And then there's usually like some other scrubby kind of one. I'm not going to say that that's necessarily different here because we definitely are dealing with commies in one of our 2 episodes here. But one thing I've been clamoring for, and I've been mentioning especially the past few weeks, Cinnamon Carter, it's just too easy to be a beautiful woman and show up and flirt with men and get them to succumb to your wily women ways and all that stuff. But in here, she's a fashionista because when you see her, this whole episode is different. And the first 10 minutes to me, the episode's over because it's so good. We finally get an episode where Dan Briggs is not a part of it at all. She gets the cassette, right? She's wearing this stunning yellow dress with a black and yellow hat kind of combo. And she's a natural blonde too. So the contrast is kind of garish, especially for her skin tone. But that being said, she pulls out the yellow this and the yellow that. And we're not in Dan's swinging singles bachelor pad anymore. We're in her swinging singles bachelorette pad with the shag carpeting with that disgusting orange and green type of shag that didn't die off until the late 70s, early 80s. So I'm just popping, like crazy on the fashion stuff because we don't nearly talk about fashion enough other than the fact that there's lots of people in suits in 60s and 70s shows to our point here. But like this first episode, second one's decent, but man, not a bad pairing. And that's usually what happens. We get one that's really, really good. And when they're both okay, they seem like they're the same episode, but because they're different, one seems a lot better. To me, it's this first episode. What's your take on this one? Get us going.
Yeah, I mean, the name of this one is Action, and boy, does it have it.
Yes.
The plot is really interesting. I was like really engrossed. Basically, this guy wants to try to make the American military look bad. Go ahead, see what their troops do. They're totally breaking the Geneva Convention all through this. But the thing is, as we're going through, they have Cinnamon does take a lead role in the start here and in the middle. But I felt like she just needed a little more to really make her feel like the leader. Dan always feels like he's in charge of the operation, right?
He does, doesn't he?
She felt like a player, like she normally is. But I love the opening. I loved that she got a Miss Carter. It just hit right.
Yeah.
Then when she gets them all together, that's good. And then she kind of disappears because of
Yeah.
What's his name? Martin and Rollin Hand.
Yeah.
He takes the lead because he's played the representative. Oh, I will bring together all the voices to go ahead. They can review the footage.
I mean, it's his show, isn't it? Really, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I do like Dan Briggs, and I didn't realize that this guy, I guess, was in like Law and Order for like 10 seasons or something like that, from like 1990 to 2000 or something or whatever. And apparently the reason why he got written off the show was because of, I guess he had some religious beliefs and some constraints put into his schedule that made it hard for them to film. And I don't know the particulars or whatever, but I wondered why he wasn't there, because your observation of him seeming like he's always in charge is true. Whether or not it's just setting the team up and letting them run, you definitely feel that way. So I agree with you with Cinnamon. Not only is she a fashionista here, and people think I'm joking about it, it's actually very significant to the whole theme of what's going to happen here in this episode, because they're trying to snake in this cable here. There's a guy that's got footage, right? And let me point this out to you, since you're the young 20-something here. Most people have never heard of the term Vietnam, the Vietnam War. This was in 1966, 67 when this, I think, the first season viewed, I think 66 on Saturday nights. So Vietnam really was maybe going on, but not really at its peak, when America pulled out and all that. So stuff was going on. So again, we go back to the idea that even though it's very easy to talk about the Cold War in the 60s heating up after World War II and everything, it's you definitely have this anti-communism type of writing pool that people would take from and put them in there. And this is what most of these episodes are in some way or another. And then here, what's significant about her is she's got this specially designed skirt that when she walks, they can measure the distance of how far something's going to be. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. That's different. They're using her not just as the lead one, not just as the
I forgot about the skirt.
Pretty femme fatale sort of thing, purveyor of information and all that too. She's I would have liked to have seen her finish it. I agree with you, because to me, all this stuff made me think, oh God, she's gonna run the whole episode, and she does seem to fade a little bit. But that notwithstanding, it's the old classic. Hey, I've got footage. I'm going to edit it in such a way that it's going to make you guys look bad. Ha 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 ha. Right. So one thing we did not mention in a lot of these episodes, and it's certainly true, a lot of what's happening here is about controlling the narrative publicly about what's happening on with worldwide politics. It's got nothing to do with, hey, this device could save the world, and in Man with the Golden Gun with the Solex, was it Solex agitator and all that? No, it's not about anything like that at all. It really is about controlling from the American perspective, because they don't really know all the particulars. They just know, hey, we got to go in there, we got to take this commie film director, we got to somehow make him ruin his own footage and then reshoot it and then look like an idiot doing it, because they're needlessly complex. But that's why we're intrigued by them and we like it. And I will say this. Even though Dan's not really a part of it, everybody else, I think, does fine. And if they're down one or two characters, it's fine. There's just this nice chemistry with each person where, unfortunately, like I think Roland's head and shoulders above the rest. But your point, Dan is the anchor, and with him not being there, you really notice it, even though these guys have great chemistry. But I don't know if it's a good or bad thing in this episode or just in the show in general, when we're going to start seeing a lot of different actors kind of come and go and kind of reset it, because the interchangeability to kind of customize it to what's going on, in this case, an actual film studio with a special guest star, which was different as well. That was interesting. I don't know if it was effective, but it made me go, oh, they didn't do any of this in the first 5-10 episodes, so I was surprised to get it so late in the season. But pleasantly so. It's a solid episode. What is it about the ending, though, you didn't really like?
No, not really like isn't a fair way to put it. So whenever they go ahead and they show the footage, they're kind of in a tight spot because Barney gets captured and he didn't mean to. Like, well, this was their first like real slip up that we get to see. But ultimately they're able to get into the room again. They showed the original footage because they're forced to. But Barney's able to get the footage showing them shooting the death sentence in the village. And all the world leaders are just laughing at him. Well, world leaders isn't the way to put it, but you know what I mean. They're laughing, and you can just see this director's just like distraught. And
it was almost anticlimactic.
Yeah. Roland Hand is just, he takes off the glasses and the hat and he looks at him, and it's like, really? Like, he walks out the door and you can see the producer just watching him, and that's the end. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea, because I think up to now a lot of people had at least a certain sense of public trust in the way that media is presented, people being professionals and stuff. And I would say that really started to slip after the moon landing and other things in the 70s too. Particularly Nixon is the person that comes to mind in the early 70s when he resigned. And so we're talking 50 years roughly ago, almost 2 generations. So once you lose something, it's hard to get it back. And obviously today, the way things are with social media and everything, I don't know that it's any different. We just have 2 or 3 times as many people in the United States as we did back then. So you've got a lot more, I think, instant accessibility to whine and complain about stuff here too. And the idea of controlling the narrative here, in this case with a really powerful one in film media here with this guy and this director, is an interesting take, because before, it's the easy stuff, right? It's guns, it's weapons, it's money, it's drugs, it's all that kind of economic kind of stuff. And here they did something a little bit different with it, which I appreciate, because that stuff's really important. We've talked before here on the Extreme Movie Show, where we're based off of great movies of some decades, and as when we end up doing the 70s, I think it's the late 70s, there's a movie called Blowout with John Travolta, or even might be the early 80s. People go back to it and go, wow, a powerful movie that really lets everybody know just how powerful manipulation of media or people through media can be, and it's not an open secret anymore. So again, I do credit Mission Impossible throwing a lot of themes there that we don't necessarily get a lot of. Some of them you and I Cold War wise talked about with The Prisoner, but we're not going to see them in shows that we've already covered, like Millennium or the X-Files we haven't even covered yet, but like Haven and a few others too, or some comedy shows, Resident Alien and stuff too. So yeah, definitely pretty interesting. But let's go ahead and just segue into the next episode.
Train.
The Train. Give me the train. I mean,
So
don't give me the train, but talk about the episode called The Train.
That's a little too much, Rob. That's a little too extreme. So essentially, the train is also taking place on a soundstage. They arrange for a world leader who's dying. For sure, they want to let you know this man's on. He's going to be dead within like months. But his successor, that he has pretty much groomed for the position, got him ready for it. His successor is actually a commie bastard.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, that's right. Wants to destroy the democracy of their nation. But they go ahead and they have a way to arrange him to travel to get an operation for something he doesn't have. They fake something wrong with his heart other than his actual condition. And they say, well, you can't fly him. He's not fit for flying. But you can take him on a train. So what do they do? Do they do all of this on a train? Well, they do it all in a train car. They get him in a train, and then they segue the train into this little warehouse soundstage that they make, put it on rocking machines, and have a movie projector to go ahead and simulate not only a full train ride, but a train crash. It is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but I loved it. It was so good. It was so good. Like, because you get the tension. There's one point when basically the general who is in it with the successor, who's already calling him, "Oh, Your Excellency." He goes, "I'm going to go wait in the first car," and he goes out the door, and he sees nothing but really black. And he's like, "Is that a wall?" And Raw in hand has to tell him, "No, we detached the car so they can go first."
It's a little ridiculous.
It's a lot ridiculous, but it's good. It's good all the way up to the final scene, which I do you want me to pause so you can?
Yeah. So this episode, like I say, sometimes you get an intense one, and like in the last episode when they're all sitting there in her singles bachelorette pad, and they're going over the war plan, let's say, or whatever. They've got the war board out there, and they're talking about her skirt measuring the distances. I was reminded, oh yeah, I'm talking about fashionista stuff, but a part of it is everybody's like smoking or whatever, right? Except for the Willie, who we never talk about, the weightlifting guy, the big jacked dude. It's kind of cool. And then here we go from like a sophisticated kind of female-led episode to silliness, which isn't horrible, but it makes you appreciate some of the scenes you would get in some of the Tom Cruise movies. And that, like when, say, for example, in let's say Mission Impossible 3, when they want to go into the Vatican, right? And so they've got the underground tunnels, and he puts on Philip Seymour Hoffman's mask, but the things don't go right. That's kind of cool when things don't go as planned. And I think that's poking a little bit of fun out of how elaborate and silly these stupid things are. And that's what I kept thinking about watching this episode, because at some point you just can't convince people of that stuff. We talked about how cool the village setting was for retired people. And if anybody out there has been watching the Monarch TV show on Apple, which I think's a disgrace, it's a travesty of justice, despite the Russells in there. Russell's character is basically in a village of his own, but he manages to escape really easy. And you would think they would have done something with his ass over the few years to kind of bleed information out of him, I guess. And so I'm looking at this little railroad downstage cart, and I go, I get that they're trying to pump out like an episode a week for Saturday evening TV, and they were doing really good ratings, but it looked really friggin' cheap to me. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it
I
just seems like almost
disagree.
every single thing they do, no matter how complicated or needlessly complicated, works. And the one thing that kind of was funny to me, but not dramatic, was several episodes ago with the diamonds. Where they're having to get the diamond and the cat's like fucking around with them because it looks like a little toy or something, and they're going through the electrical housing in the wall. I mean, I just think of, okay, surely there's going to be an episode where the shit just goes off the rails, and it should be something like this. But it just
It does go off the rails.
I
They
mean,
literally take it off the rails.
yeah, but I mean, you know what I'm saying, and it's like
I
I'm like
disagree
you. I'm
about
like,
it
okay,
looking
this is
cheap.
different, huh?
I disagree about it looking cheap. Like just it being shot, I loved inside of the train how tight it felt. Like
I love
it
trains
felt,
and being on trains. There's a romantic element to trains. Don't get me wrong, love it a lot, but
I loved
I didn't
that.
quite get that vibe in here.
I loved especially the scene at the end in the makeshift
Go ahead with the
hospital
end.
room.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Like, it's ridiculous because, like we said, they're on a train, but they make it an artificial journey.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's great. Like, I loved it. I think I liked it a little more than the previous episode, actually.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it's my understanding. Dan Briggs is gonna not be seen as much, obviously. So, you know, these things happen. It doesn't really affect our viewing of these episodes. I don't think so, because, like I said, I've been commenting on. I want to see a chance for somebody else to shine, and we get to see people stand out to help out and pull their weight a little bit, but they're not everybody's there all the time. And it's the Roland show and Cinnamon show, kind of, sort of. But I do
This
like,
one had 2 guest stars.
yeah, and like I think with the last one having a guest star who I didn't really recognize and didn't bother researching, I was like, yeah, whatever. I don't really care unless it's somebody you really know at the time or whatever. It's hard. Like Ricardo Montalban is the heavy in one of our episodes that we just did last week, was fantastic. But even if you didn't know who he was, or that he later on would be Khan and Fantasy Island, at the time he wasn't those guys. He was just, you know, a guy doing it. And here with 2 guests, I mean,
They just felt like they were there.
yeah. I mean,
other than the doctor did have like a good weight about him.
And they do a good job, especially in almost episodes where they've got like a Vic Tayback and other guys or whatever, for heavies or just a thug, of people were like, yeah. And there's one guy whose name off the top of my head, that in one of the earlier episodes, there's 2 guys in particular were like, man, this guy just seems to really jump off the screen to you. Like, this guy's great. And we mentioned him at the time of that episode, that he really elevated the performance. And it's like having somebody like a Donald Pleasance in the Halloween trilogy. He makes it a lot better by being in it. I think here, with the absence of Dan in the one episode, you're like, yeah, you can really feel it, but it's okay because now we get to focus on the people that we have seen for most of the episodes now. So I kind of like that. Hey, while I'm gone, you're going to be in charge. Let's see what happens. It's a little different. So in here, I don't know if I was ready for 2 guest episodes, or 2 guest episodes, 2 guest stars here in this episode. Like I say, I just felt like they were there too. Yeah, it's okay. It's not a bad episode. I don't think we've had a stinker yet. Some of them physically just look cheap because you can tell that as they're walking out of the jungle, 2 feet behind them, so the stage play, you know, board with the fake trees and stuff like that. That I can kind of,
which worked in the last episode.
Yeah, but it's just noticeable, and I can give it a pass. But sometimes when you have too many people, or you can tell it's like the backlot of whatever set of wherever this was filmed. I don't know if it was Universal, I don't know if it was Paramount or Warner. I don't know at the time, but both of these episodes really felt like they were just being cheap and go, man, we got to crank this out. Let's just do an episode where we can film it on here. Let's do something about a guy that's a film director, a bad dude. Okay, I could just hear it when I saw these 2 episodes. I was like, yeah, you know. So, but I would rather have a backlot piece for being a big part of a movie or a TV show than really bad stock footage like we sometimes see in these older shows too. So, but you know, that kind of footage is expensive, so I get it too, but it can date a little bit. But yeah, it's another decent set of episodes here. I can't say I've really hated any of them so far. Some have been forgettable and plain or mid or whatever, but out of these two, the first one I think was just head and shoulders above. The second was just a little kooky. Yeah. What do you think?
And no one dies. No one dies.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah. I mean, if it's nobody likes an unnecessary death, unless you're watching like teenagers in a slaughter film.
Well, it's about the story, right? So
yeah.
And going back to the Carla Khan episode, you want to see his ass get blown away because he's an ethnic guy whipping a black male, and then we're like, what the hell's going on here? Why the hell did they put this on TV? But we talked through all that and why it happened, and it turns out they had a past relationship experience and all that, so it made sense. So you're ready to see this fucker blow up in in the whole. But here you're right; they kind of kept it clean.
I do like, because now we should talk about the end before we wrap up. I do like the hospital set that they make within the warehouse after the crash.
Mm-hmm.
They have a beach. They go ahead and they have they let the general get up and go over. He receives the news from the nurse, which is Cinnamon, saying, "Oh, the Prime Minister's dead. Oh, it's so horrible." And she points him over to the successor, and there is a two-way mirror there. And on the other side, who's there? The Prime Minister, because he did not believe that his successor would do anything against him, against his wishes. He's basically raised him like a son for this position. And seeing, well, we're going to do away with all of it. Yes, we'll get the jails emptied like he wanted by starting executions immediately. Horrible. And so it opens up, you get to see it. I love that they take the actual wall. They don't do like the mirror. They take off the wall instead. And I'll accept your resignation. That's it. It's enough. It's great. And even though he's dying, he's like,
not apply in a Mission Impossible episode. Yeah, here's your job. Just go do it. I don't give a fuck. I mean, that's really what it is. You got unlimited resources. You can do whatever you want. And by the way, when you fuck up, it won't be your fault. Okay, I'm fine with that setup. Yeah, the thing with Cinnamon as a nurse too in the hospital, it started making me think. I think she's played that role kind of before, which is fine. I think of when I was a kid, my parents had watched a show that was super popular called The Fugitive with, a doctor that's accused of murdering his wife, and he's on the run. And Dr. David Jansen is the actor who plays the doctor. And so you see him pulling out the doctor skills in some episodes and stuff like that. And, all the world's, if you don't remember that he's a doctor, well, then, shame on you, because they make it clear. So I remember as a kid going, well, how much did they really know about medicine in the 60s when it was being shot, right? But it was simple, effective storytelling, much like Mission Impossible's been. You've got your sub for the episode. You get it. You might have your guest star. You don't really have a lot of guest stars in say, The Fugitive, but it was interesting to make it a medically centered individual and all that, because in a way it's like a Western. You're somebody that rolls up in a town and you got your moral compass. Things, go against it. Shit happens. It's a perfect drama, kind of like Kung Fu is a great Western, the TV show. And I don't think Mission Impossible necessarily is a Western like that, because they don't really deal with moral things. It's really more of an action, how cute kind of show we can be. But you started getting clever things in with politics and espionage that wasn't just flat out war stuff, spying in particular. And so there's a lot of spy movies at the time. You talked about the rise of television shows that involved a lot of cops coming up in the 70s, definitely going into the 80s, but also as well things that were going on at the time, like Vietnam and communism, obviously a big thing. Are there any shows out today that deal with saying how bad communism is? No. Is it still around and prevalent? Absolutely. So I just found it interesting that they decided to go, hey, you know what? This might make it more realistic if we include something like it. And they damn sure every other episode, it seems like, did not let you forget that, damn it, commies are the bad guys and we're going after them somehow, some way. This is all related to people that want to make America not look good in a way. Not that this is a pro-America show. It's like cheerleading rah, 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 but it's just amazing to me that at the time, culturally, that was just a very big thing in a lot of television shows. So kind of interesting. I think we're probably going to get more of the same in the next 2 weeks when we finish off the last 4 episodes of season 1 of Mission
Indeed.
Impossible. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Any other thoughts? No, it is pretty much, these are really good episodes. Again, I mean, this might be the one of the best season 1s that we reviewed. It'll be right up there with Twin Peaks.
It will not beat Twin Peaks.
I didn't say beat. I said be up there.
Yeah. Well, because basically, no matter how many episodes we've seen, they're all the same. We know kind of what's going to happen, and that's okay. Twin Peaks had no idea what the fuck was going on. That's I know, but it's just that's the difference between TV like this, because even though this is Saturday night television, it's still pretty damn entertaining. Am I right?
It's
Whereas
very
you get all these
entertaining.
big budget productions today, and half of them are forgettable garbage. And you're like, yeah, I've seen this before. Yeah, I've seen this before. At least do something unique and do it a whole bunch of times in a row, so I get used to what it is that you're doing. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Season 1, Mission Impossible episodes 23 and 24. Check them out. Let us know what you think. We're going to finish up 25 and 6 next week, and the week after that, the final 2 of season 1. Looking forward to that. For Professor Pixel and everybody involved here at the Extreme Movie Show, I'm your host, Rob. Have a good night, and always stay extreme. Good night now.
Episode 1 was not a Dan Briggs mission.